welcome to Rahau Academy on Air. This podcast is a way for us to present non-technical information related to Rahau in a Q&A format with industry experts. I'm Max Rohr, the Rahau Academy Manager for North America. My guest today is Justin Taylor. He's a design engineer at Rahau in Leesburg, Virginia in the product development group for Windows Solutions. Today we're going to be covering a general window overview topic. Thank you for joining me, Justin.
Good afternoon.
So what are the different styles of windows that exist on the market?
There's various window types out there, starting with picture windows. Some call them fixed or stationary windows. Those are your typical units that do not operate, allowing a lot of light in, a lot of shapes you can produce with fixed windows. Angles, half rounds, just about anything you can think of you can put into essentially a picture window that does not open.
So in general, if you wanted to do something a little bit more creative, a fixed window is going to be the way to go instead of an operable window of some sort that's probably more likely to be a square or rectangle, or can it be either or?
It can be either or. Typically, you can see these sort of things from a residential standpoint in a foyer, for instance, where it's going to be a window that's too high, and you want to have a nice decorative window that you cannot open. So that's a good application for it.
Okay. As far as operable windows go, what are the different options that you would have?
Excuse me. There's many different operable windows, starting with single hung and double hung windows, which are the most common units that are found in the residential community. Single hung windows being where only one sash will open from the bottom up. A double hung window being windows that will open both top and bottom. Double hung windows are good for venting, heat out of the top, and also they allow you to clean the units from the inside of the home, for instance. With a single hung, you can clean from the inside the bottom sash, it's going to be, if it's in a single story home, you can clearly wash the windows from the outside. However, in a double story unit or higher, you can tilt the sash in, whether it's a single or double hung. The double hung, you can obviously clean both sash from in the interior of the building.
Yeah, my last condo, I had a single hung window that I did have to clean from about the second story, and it probably wasn't the safest thing that I've ever done because you kind of had to be out the window a little bit to get your arm up to the top pane. So that's good to know that you would want to do that, especially if you weren't going to be able to walk around the outside of the house and reach the top of a single hung window, I guess.
That's right, and that's where the double hung would definitely be ideal.
Okay.
Other operating windows are anything from a casement window, which is a window that cranks outward. There are inward casement units. However, the most common is an outward swing casement. It's hinged on one side, and it has a crank on the inside, and you essentially just crank it out when the screen is on the inside of the window in that case, where most window systems, the screen's on the outside. In addition, you have awning and hopper windows. Awning windows are going to have a hinge at the top, and they're going to hinge to where the bottom of the sash goes outward. Think of an awning on top of a doorway, for instance. It's the same concept, but with a window. And a hopper is essentially the reverse of that, where it is hinged at the bottom and opens inward.
So what are some good applications for a hopper style window? Where would you use that?
You see them. They're very common in office buildings, where you can get ventilation from the left and the right, and schools. You'll see them in many schools. Awnings as well. They have very similar applications.
I guess a disadvantage of a hopper would be that if it rained and it were open, you're funneling water right into your house, I guess?
Yeah, a driving rain is going to come in for sure.
Okay.
But, hopefully we're closing the windows at that point.
Yeah.
But yes, that's true. And that's the case with any window, really. I mean, if a window's open, then you have that potential for something to come in. But the good news with, or the good thing about hoppers, awnings, and casements They're typically with a compression seal, and the compression seal is going to provide a very good water seal, allow for better or the reduction of air infiltration, like I said, water performance, and also for sound abatement. It works really well.
So in general, you're not, with any of the different operable windows, you're not really keeping rain out. The window needs to close at some point.
When it's open, no.
Yeah.
No.
But what are some of the other things that a compression seal would fix? What are some advantages to that? Or maybe tell me a little bit more about how a compression seal works and how that would be different from just a builder grade Home Depot type window.
Yeah. The typical window that you see in most homes is a single hung or a double hung, and it's a sliding window that's sliding up and down. And that unit is going to have what weather stripping that I think everybody's pretty much familiar with on the jambs or within the frame. And that's like a fiber material that can be that water can penetrate, air can penetrate. It does a pretty good job holding it out. However, when you talk about compression seal, you're talking about a dynamic rubber or polymer seal that will compress, and it will keep its shape over time. When you talk about the weather stripping, I just mentioned, a lot of times that has a tendency to flatten out, and over time will degrade, and your performance will be reduced on the windows. With a compression seal, you have a little bit of a longer life in that regard, and it's going to provide a better seal, especially in applications where you see that you want better sound abatement, for instance. Very popular in hospitality. Whether in hospitality you have fixed windows and some operable windows, tilt and turns, which we haven't talked about yet, but we'll mention in a minute. You have really good sound abatement with compression seals.
So in general, the compression seal is just going to be a better way to keep the noise out, a better thermal performance, I guess, that if you are going to do an operable window and those things are important to you, that a compression seal technology, regardless of how it opens or closes, would be a better technology to use. Is that right?
Yes, yeah, that's fair to say. The only issue in that regard is you will not see many compression seal single hung or double hung type windows out on the market. So when we talk compression seal, we're mainly discussing awnings, hoppers, casements, and then the tilt and turn units.
Yeah, go ahead and tell me, how does a tilt and turn window work?
Tilt and turn is a very interesting window. The operation of a tilt and turn window, it allows you to not only tilt it inward from the top with a turn of the handle for venting, for allowing airflow, but you can also tilt the handle once again and open the unit. So it's basically a dual action window, and it's very interesting. And with that window, you also have compression seals, so in multiple locking points, as you do with casement windows as well. And the multiple locking points in combination with the compression seals really provides not only good security but excellent security.
So if you buy just a window at a big box store or something like that, it's just going to have that that single kind of latch between the panes, and that what are some advantages to having multiple locking points?
Multiple locking points is critical once again, so you get a nice tight seal around the complete unit. If you didn't have multiple locking points, for instance, if you were using a casement window or a turning window for the sake of this conversation, and you only had locking at the handle, for instance, then at the top, at the head and the sill of the window, you may have a lot of it may be somewhat loose per se, and any pressure, any air pressure, wind pressure could actually penetrate, and not to mention it's not going to be as secure. So the multiple locking points essentially go all the way around the window, so they're all locking at one point and bringing the unit in to compress all at the same distance.
Okay, so it's a safety issue if somebody had a crowbar and was trying to get in.
Absolutely.
As well as just really making sure that you've got a tight seal with the window all the way around, because the same window that I was cleaning at my condo before, you could tell that there were some spots that breeze would make it through.
That's right. That's right. And that once again is the big difference between using a hung type window versus a turning window, a tilt turn or a casement style window.
So it's almost like a bank vault or something like that it's actually really locked in there from a bunch of different angles to be a nice secure fit. Okay, and I know that I've seen that tilt and turn style in Europe a little bit more. It seems like that's not as popular here, but I think that it's probably something people just don't quite know, that they have the option to do a more interesting window that's got the thermal performance and the security features that they may or may not be aware that they've been missing.
Well, unfortunately, I don't think we're as environmentally conscious and concerned with the thermal values as I hope we soon will be, and that's when these type of window systems will really take off.
And that's something, I'm newer to RAHAU, so when I first saw the profile for the windows, it's a lot thicker than I was expecting. I mean, you think of a traditional window as only being maybe 3 inches, 4 inches wide or something like that. But there's a lot more space in between with our window frames and all the different chambers inside. I mean, how does that affect the thermal performance? Is that how we get to those higher energy ratings? What piece does that play?
The glass actually plays a huge role in the thermal values. However, our profiles are also specifically when we talk about the tilt and turn style windows, much thicker walls within our profiles. More cavities within the windows certainly provides for much better thermal performance.
So then, are there any other types of window styles, or is that the concept of the different shapes and operations of how a window works?
When we talk just windows, that's definitely the majority of styles. We talked about picture windows. We talked about hung windows, casement, awning, hopper, and tilt and turn. I think the only thing we didn't really mention is sliders. A sliding window, whether it's a single slide or a double sliding window, they're essentially the same as a single hung or a double hung window, just turned on its side.
Okay, so we're sliding left or right instead of up and down.
There really is not much difference between the two. I mean, obviously, with the hung unit, you have balance systems in order to balance the weight of the glass when you open a window. And that's why a window is actually somewhat easy to open, because there's actually balance systems in the jambs, whether it's a spring system or a coil system. A bunch of different trade names for it, but from a general term, spring or coil for the sake of this. And that really balances out the weight. With a sliding window, you don't have that. You have just essentially the sash sitting on rollers, and open and close on those rollers.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess that it's lighter than lifting the equivalent glass, I guess, when you open a window. It's not like you're picking it up off of the ground. So what are some differences in a residential or a commercial setting? What are some factors there that would affect what windows you would look at?
That's a little tough when it comes to the residential side. What we see mainly in residential is the single hung and double hung windows. I know at least on the East Coast, specifically in our area, we see single hung windows more than anything, and you'll see the occasional casement window, which is typically located in a kitchen above the sink. That's kind of a popular application over here. I think up in Canada you're going to see a lot more casement windows because they're a little more thermally efficient than a hung or a slider unit. From a commercial standpoint, you're going to see you're not going to find hung slider windows in an actual commercial unit, most likely. Maybe a light commercial application. You're typically going to see anything from a tilt and turn, maybe casements, awnings, hoppers, and fixed windows, of course. But definitely steering away from the hung and sliders in a commercial application. Other than maybe hospitality, you're going to see a sliding unit that's sitting over top of, in a hotel, for instance, you're going to see a sliding window sitting over top of the AC in your hotel room. And that's pretty common.
The hotel thing is interesting too, because I know that we've had some success stories with sound in hospitality environments. So what's an example of a Rayhow window, helping solve one of those problems for the hotels that might be by a noisy road or an airport or something like that?
Sure. Once again, we would talk about most likely fixed windows or tilt-turn windows when it comes to sound abatement. I know we've had a lot of success with the tilt and turn windows. Obviously, the glass plays a big part in that, but the compression seal and the multi-point locking on a tilt and turn window really applies a lot of assistance when it comes to sound abatement. And fixed windows, of course, they're stationary, not going to open. So, of course, as long as you have a really good glass package and a fixed style window, you're gonna have a good amount of sound abatement.
Okay. So if you were to guess, are people making window decisions based more on the performance or the operation of windows in the U.S.?
I think in the U.S., honestly, when it comes to new construction, you typically don't have a choice. You're going with what the builder provides. When it comes to the replacement market, replacement windows, that's where the performance really comes in. That's when people are conscious about what they want. They want to meet. They notice when they're standing by the window that they get a draft, or they can just feel the heat coming through the glass on a certain style of window that they have. But that's where the performance really comes in, and where the decisions are made to go with the higher end window, like some of these that we're discussing, to upgrade their home.
So unless your builder is shooting for LEED Platinum or something like that, it may be more of a problem solver than necessarily the standard issue equipment, I guess, for a new building.
Yeah, that's safe to say for sure.
Well, I'd like to thank you, Justin, for giving me an overview of window styles and their applications. You can find more about Rayhow window styles at na.rayhow.com/window styles.